Politics shapes more than laws. It shapes culture, education, and even how we judge right from wrong. And for many Christians, that poses a serious problem. Some step away from politics because it feels corrupt. Others become so consumed by it that politics start shaping their faith more than scripture does. The question isn't whether politics matters. The real question is what politics is doing to us. Political influence is a double-edged sword, especially when it targets emotions like fear, anger, and resentment. If left unchecked, those emotions can do real damage. Fear makes people easier to manipulate. Anger lowers tolerance and breeds contempt. Resentment erodes trust and polarizes families and communities. Which brings us to the false dichotomy, the idea that Christians have to choose between silence and assimilation. But that is the problem. Both options are a trap. On one side, some Christians believe political discourse is too corrupt and volatile for meaningful engagement. On the other hand, some believe that in order to avoid rejection and have influence, you have to adopt an unhealthy political ideology. What most people miss is that both extremes give up something important. Silence gives up agency, responsibility, and influence. Assimilation gives up clarity, balance, and spiritual independence. Neither one reflects disciplined moral judgment. And in both cases, you do not escape politics. You simply leave yourself and your family at the mercy of someone else's decisions. The truth is, history makes it hard to claim faith and politics have nothing to do with each other. Christianity has shaped Western culture for centuries. By the end of the Roman Empire, it had become deeply intertwined with political power. And through the Middle Ages, it helped shape education, culture, and politics across Europe. And once that becomes clear, we're left with something deeper than a modern political position. We're left with a biblical pattern. No retreat, no surrender. Not as a Christian war cry, but as our mantra as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Again and again, scripture shows us that God's people can live, serve, and even lead in the presence of hostile and conflicting worldviews without surrendering their identity, their convictions, or their obedience to God. We see this pattern play out clearly in Babylon. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were men of God with influence and political power. But wicked Babylonian leaders felt so threatened, they used political power to make faith in God a matter of life and death. Yet, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow down to idols, and Daniel refused to stop worshipping God. And this pattern didn't end in Babylon. Joseph held power in Egypt, and Esther had great influence in Persia. As counterintuitive as it may seem, conviction without assimilation is what obedience looks like in positions of power. But that kind of obedience requires more than passive awareness. It requires wisdom, clarity, and discipline. Because before Christians can meaningfully shape culture, they need a way to filter what they hear, a way to choose how they respond, and a way to recognize what is shaping their worldview. For this, I use what I call the Pauline lens, a practical filter adapted from Philippians 4 verse 8. Pausing and reflecting on these questions separates rhetoric from reality and turns outrage into calm clarity. So before you get swept up in the 24-hour news cycle, ask yourself, is this message true or just emotionally effective? Because social media algorithms reward engagement, political influencers and bad faith actors are incentivized to distort the truth in favor of rage bait. Now ask yourself, is this message noble or merely aggressive? Might is not always right. So is it just, or is it just useful to my side? In politics, people often hold positions not because they're morally correct, but because that stance protects their identity and helps their side win. So beware of partisan self-interest. Now look deeper. Is that position pure or corrupted by resentment and vanity? Consider the motive. Not every protest is righteous. Avoid performative outrage fueled by bitterness and pride. And if you're still not sure, ask yourself, is this message lovely or does it breed contempt? Is it commendable or is it just viral? Virality is not value. A message that spreads quickly can still be toxic, shallow, or flat out false. As you reflect on these things, if you find virtue and see that it is worthy of praise, you begin to find the kind of clarity that politics often tries to steal from you. Politics and culture matter because people matter, and political decisions reach farther than most people are willing to admit. They reach into our homes, our schools, our communities, and they help shape the world the next generation will inherit. Like it or not, politics is woven into the fabric of society. The real question is, will you confront that reality with the kind of moral clarity and conviction that refuses to bow to anything other than truth?